Hello, this is part of Module 3, the beginning, Introduction to Qualitative Methods. This module was done based on materials developed by Dr. Paul Bolton at Johns Hopkins University and adapted for our use here. The original materials can be obtained online, both from Johns Hopkins as well as the Kansas State Health Department, the Toolkit for Community Health Assessment, which are also part of this module's readings. As an introduction, the difference of the two kinds of methods that we have for getting information have to do with qualitative or quantitative. Quantitative assessments you've been learning in epidemiology, and some of the distinctions between them. Qualitative take the perspective of the emic perspective, meaning that you are looking at what the insider's perspective as compared to quantitative, where you're taking an outsider's or an overview perspective. These are words that are used in anthropology and other sorts of views. It's not something that we expect you to know. Qualitative interviewing and data collection is hypothesis generating. You're trying to find out what is happening. How do people talk about it? What things do local people consider important? The data in this kind of exercise is words and pictures that people use. You're using small, focused samples, what is considered purposive or directed samples. You get multiple contacts and you have much more depth with each one. In a quantitative, which many of you have seen, such as questionnaires, those sorts of things, you already have hypothesis and you are checking it. So you're asking how many of things that you've already thought of, what numbers you can collect from it. You're taking representative samples, you try to get large samples, single focused contacts. So what are qualitative methods? They are conversations, and they're aimed at reducing the effect of the interviewer on those being interviewed. You're trying to really get a perspective about what the local or the insider's view is about how they think, feel, what they know, and what they do. Knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, and skills. You're trying to get their point of view. And hopefully this will help you understand local beliefs, attitudes, practices, and priorities from the local or inside point of view. Sometimes it's interesting when we're going to communities that we are familiar with, such as the one you're doing here, that we think we are an insider, but we aren't perhaps, and we really want to get the insider's point of view. So it's important to think a bit more like an anthropologist and assume that you may not know what's behind certain things that are going on, and ask a lot of questions and be interested. So the purpose of qualitative interviews is to improve the communication between the service providers or the outsiders and local people. You want to use what you get in these kinds of interviews and surveys to develop quantitative research and evaluation methods and tools, but you need the information from the insider's point of view to actually develop valid tools to do quantitative surveys. This will help with planning interventions or improving them so that they can be tailored to local people's perceived needs and acceptable to them. Examples of qualitative methods, they're divided into two types. One is the methods to look at the individual, and others for the group methods. So individual methods are free listing. You ask an individual to list all of the things perhaps related to a topic. Key informant interviews, pile sorts, and observations. Group methods are focus groups, timelines, and community mapping. We will be talking about community mapping in terms of assets in this course. We'll go over free listing and a bit about observation, but we'll leave it to another course to go in more depth about some of these methods. Challenges. How can we get the right answers when we don't know the right questions? So the more specific the question that you ask someone, the greater the chance for misunderstanding. That may not seem intuitive, but in fact we want to ask people information that ask them questions that gives us the most information. So we want to encourage people to say what they really think and not to say what they think we want to hear. And that is a dynamic that happens in conversation all the time. And you have to really try to be alert to when you are somehow leading or guiding the interview as the interviewer is trying to please you or respond to you. So basic principles of qualitative interviewing these are things that we'll go over in other sections of this module, but this is the sort of large overview. We want to use non-leading questions, open-ended questions, use probes to get more information about something. We consider the interviewee the expert, not ourselves as the expert. We avoid asking the question why. We learn the respondent's vocabulary. We ask about the community or what most people do. We don't necessarily say to the interviewee, how do you do this? And we assume that all interactions, even those in our own hometown or our community, are cross-cultural. So we'll go over some of these topics as we proceed.